Shalom. Welcome to Hayom. I'm Rabbi Arnold Rachlis. Most people, when they think of Jewish professions, think of a rabbi or a cantor, perhaps a Hebrew teacher, but there are many, many more Jewish professions, and sometimes they're more visible in the more observant, in the Orthodox community than in the more liberal community. We're going to talk to 4 people today who work very actively on behalf of the Jewish community, with the Jewish community, in professions that are very time-honored and sacred, and they're continuing them to this day. We first have with us Yochanan Nathan.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom. Yochanan Nathan is a sofer, a scribe, as well as the owner of Beis Stam, of a Jewish bookstore. Dr. Gary Siegel is a professor at DePaul in accounting, and he is the founder of the Jewish Burial Society, which is a non-profit Chevra Kadisha, a non-profit Jewish burial society different than a Jewish funeral home. Mrs. Elizabeth Shapiro is the vice president of the Chicago Mikveh Association and is in charge of giving tours, explaining, and promoting the use of the mikveh, the ritual bath in Chicago.
Correct.
And Reverend Wolff, Reverend Noah Wolff, is a mohel, a moel, a ritual circumciser. And I think, Noah, we're going to begin with you.
Okay.
Since you're there at the beginning of life, at least in the 8th day for many Jewish baby boys, tell us why you became a moel and what a moel does.
All right. My reason for becoming a moel is quite interesting. It was basically to fill a need in the community, in the Jewish community. I came to the Gary, Indiana Jewish community as a educational and youth director there back in 1948. I was approached by a physician in the community that was very interested in preserving this rite of ritual circumcision, or Brit Milah as we call it. And there was no moel in the community. They were relying on people coming out of Chicago, and he felt that a Jewish community the size of Gary should have someone fulfilling that function in its midst. And that's basically how I became involved and interested, and it was through his tutelage, a man by the name of Dr. Philip Rosenblum, and another moel in the community of South Bend, Indiana, that started me in that profession and that interest.
How is a Brit Milah, a bris, different than a circumcision? What makes them distinct?
Well, basically, number one, the day that it's done, because it has to be done according to halacha, to Jewish law, on the 8th day, and within the daylight hours between sunrise and sunset, and preferably as early as possible in the day.
Can you tell us why all those laws apply?
Well, because the Torah mentioned when this law appears, that it's to be done on the 8th day. There's no specific reason given for the 8th day. It was interesting that a physician pointed out to me, whose child I circumcised, that there were 2 doctors that did research on optimum bleeding at St. James Hospital in Chicago Heights. This was back in 1956, and they found that the best time for blood coagulation in an infant was between the 8th and the 10th day. I don't know whether that has anything to do with the 8th day as far as the Torah is concerned, but it was an interesting observation that was made to me.
Why during daylight?
And during daylight is because we take the literal translation of Bayom Hashmini as meaning during the 8th day and during the daylight hours. Why early is because we are told Zerizim umakdimim lemitzvah, that we ought to perform a mitzvah as early in the day as possible, and therefore there's the minhag, the custom of doing a Brit Milah early in the morning.
If someone says to you, well, I have relatives who live on the East Coast, let's say, and they can't make it into Chicago till Sunday, can you postpone the bris till Sunday, which might be the 10th day or the 6th day? What do you tell them?
No, that it's very important that it be done on the 8th day, that it even pushes off the importance of the Sabbath, that if the 8th day coincides with the Sabbath, or even our most sacred holiday, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, that the bris is to take place on the 8th day. And therefore, being that they're given 8 days' notice, they should be able to arrange their schedule to be able to attend even from the West Coast or the East Coast, wherever that place might be. You also asked at the onset of your discussion the question of what is another difference between a circumcision and a Brit Milah, and the basic other difference is the person that is performing that mitzvah. The person that is performing it should himself be trained religiously and medically in that area, as well as be an observant Jew. In other words, those are the basic requirements of a mohel, and the basic requirements as to the day that it should be done.
Is usually passed on through the apprentice system? I mean, in addition to the studying with the physician and studying sacred texts, is it passed down from father to son, or at least
not? It could be passed down from father to son. It could be passed down from mohel to trainee. It could be there was, I don't know whether this still exists, but I know that there was a school for mohalim in the city of New York in conjunction with the Brit Milah Board and the New York Board of Rabbis and Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, where they had a specific training program, a 2-year training program for mohalim.
Can a woman be a mohel?
No, a woman cannot be a mohel because actually because she herself is not the recipient of this mitzvah, of the Brit, therefore she cannot perform it. In other words, the person that is performing the Brit Milah should himself be a recipient of the mitzvah.
Isn't there another technical difference? For example, in the Brit Milah, we have to cut 2 skins, and in the circumcision in the hospital, I'm not sure about this. I'm asking.
No, but they do cut both. They cut both skins as well, but they use different instruments and different methodology, and therefore, of course, are not fulfilling the halachic aspect within Jewish law in doing it properly.
Yochanan, let me ask you, you run a Jewish bookstore based in Chicago, and you are a sofer, you're a scribe. What do you do? I mean, what kinds of things does a sofer do? Different texts, different...
Well, a sofer is called a sofer stam, which means basically that he writes Sifrei Torah scrolls, tefillin, the phylacteries which Jewish people wear, males, and mezuzahs. So the word stam is an acrostic made up of these different mitzvahs. So that's basically what I do. I write these particular documents and check and correct, and besides that, sell all sorts of other Jewish articles.
Do you sell in your store traditional texts rather than general Judaica?
Yeah, in my store we specialize in the more religious nature.
Is there a reason for that? I mean, would someone be able to find Martin Buber's Tales of the Hasidim there, or...
No.
Okay, why not? That's my question.
Well, this is a highly charged question you're asking. The reason is because I feel that we have an adage in Judaism, Lahakim Sukas David HaNafeles, to raise up, to elevate the fallen down tabernacle of David, which means basically to spread the light of the Torah. And many of the works that have been brought forward by people who are not really Torah scholars cannot be really considered as Torah. It doesn't obviously support the correct attitudes in many spheres. So my bookstore is specialist in this field. We try to only have that of an orthodox nature.
So the store is open to anyone who wants to come in. You don't have to be orthodox to purchase books there, but you can expect to find traditional texts.
Oh yes,
there.
certainly. In fact, we're busy having a lot of people coming in off the streets. People who don't know much about Yiddishkeit, about Judaism. All sorts of people come in. The religious sector. It's an open forum. Our store is an open forum.
Let me ask you a little bit about your background. You are a Baal Tshuva, if I may use that term. Maybe you want to use a different term, but a Baal Tshuva is somebody who comes back to tradition, who might have begun as a much more liberal Jew. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
If you'd like.
Please.
I grew up in South Africa and Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, I understand. I don't read the newspapers much, so Anyhow,
Can you tell us why you don't read the newspapers?
I'm busy. I have one things to do.
Are there things, though, that that people... Would you consider yourself a chassid?
Yeah, I'm a Lubavitcher chassid.
Are there things that Lubavitchers don't do in terms of newspapers, magazines, television, radio?
In general, they don't watch television, and they do read a few newspapers. I couldn't mention a few, but in general, I think most religious people are occupied in learning Torah, learning the traditional works of the Torah, and as you see, Wolff is involved in his Mila. These are things which consume a lot of time. There are a lot of mitzvahs that we are doing publicly, which they just require a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time for sitting and reading newspapers or watching television or even listening to the radio.
Are there any prohibitions in terms of that as a matter of time, or are Lubavitchers, Chabadniks severely prohibited or from doing it?
Well, this is also a touchy area.
I didn't say it would be easy to be on the show.
If you would ask me as a rabbi, which I'm not, by the way, I would say this, that since I remember seeing in the village where I learned in Israel, in Kfar Chabad, that the rabbis came out with a statement which said that it's forbidden to watch the television, meaning the television which was available to the people. This kind of a media that we're having here obviously would not be a forbidden thing. But the reason for that is television is time consuming. And in general, a Jew has to sit and learn Torah. Yeah, when he has spare time, he should learn the holy works. That's a commandment to learn Torah. So if you're occupied learning, doing something else, you're being mevatel. You're not spending the time learning as you're supposed to. So that's
Sure, Elizabeth.
As a parent who has a television in my home, and I think any parent or anybody in the general public has this very strong attitude of censorship within the framework of their own home. There are certain programs that are open to the children or to the adults, certain that are not. I think the Hasidic Jew goes one step further and says, why have anything in my house that is... That's right, exactly. Clearly, you have here a spectrum of people who focus on every aspect of Jewish life for the most part, from birth to death, from the mezuzah on the door to my area. And the Orthodox Hasidic Jew says, why have anything in my house that my children will be, we all know that when you sit down to watch television, it is very often more time consuming than you had originally planned. And the attitude there is, why bring anything into my house that I cannot expose my children to or myself to all the time? And if it has an element in it that is not conducive with or has the same kind of an aura that the Jewish home tries to create, why have it? You can live a very fulfilling life without a television set.
Is it difficult to be Orthodox in modern American society?
On one hand, it's difficult. On the other, it's much easier. It is so much easier today to be Orthodox in terms of setting up a Jewish home, in terms of traveling. I travel a great deal, and I take food with me. The holiday of Passover, which at one time was very difficult because it was hard to get foods. Today, because of the ease, because of perhaps the greater proliferation of the Jewish ideals and awareness of Jewish ideals, it's far easier to be Orthodox. It's more challenging, perhaps, because as the world opens up and new, you can try to get involved with so many new areas. Being Orthodox inhibits that to a small measure. There are certain things you cannot do. There are certain places.
Give me an example.
Well, you can't eat non-kosher food. I have often thought that I think if I were to let go of any one of the commandments, it would be food. I have this desire to eat when I travel, I would rather go into a restaurant and have a waiter bring me a meal than open up a can of tuna or warm up a pot of soup in my motel room. But the Jewish life is very disciplined. And while there are things that one cannot and should not do, the world is open. And it's a matter of focusing or putting religion into, adapting our life to our religion, not the religion to our life. And I think the fact that there are 4 people here, yourself included, who are traditional Jews, speak well for the fact that here in the 1980s it can be done successfully. We cover different areas of professions or ways to earn our living, and yet we're all observant Jews.
and speak of them openly and without any
inhibitions.
Be able to discuss it on a program where everyone and anyone is able to listen and learn and glean from it.
You think there was much more embarrassment a generation ago about wearing a kippah on the street or tzitzis, ritual fringes that hang out?
Definitely. You walk through hospitals today in every major city in the United States and you see young medical students and doctors, practicing physicians wearing kippot in the hospitals.
How does that make you feel as somebody who's Orthodox?
It makes me feel very good. Yeah. It makes me feel extremely good.
I want to
That
ask.
was a vestige of the unfortunately the Holocaust years. You know, being a refugee myself, having gone to school at an age where I was called names and had rocks thrown at me. But the refugees have this terrible fear, not having been raised in a land such as America, where there is freedom, and even though there is a certain level of anti-Semitism, the vestige that lingers with the European Jew or the refugee is beginning to wane through this new generation of Americans who grow up trained in Judaica and living in a free country where you can wear tzitzis or a beard or a kippah and nobody looks at you or wishes to stone you or to cause you any harm.
Let me ask you about the mikveh.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating discussion about modern Orthodoxy, but I want to and more traditional Orthodoxy. But let's go back to mikveh for a moment. The mikveh is, what is a mikveh? Who uses the mikveh? Men, women, in what capacities, how frequently?
A mikveh is a gathering of waters, in essence. That's the literal meaning of the word. The mikveh, or the ritualarium as it is often called, is a small swimming pool, in essence, a small pool into which both men and women at different times immerse themselves. The waters of the mikveh are a combination of tap water and rainwater, and they immerse themselves so that at some point their entire body is covered with this water as a means of purification. Now, I use that word only because there is no other word to use. The concept of mikveh for women, again, as we said, the Jewish religion is such that it disciplines every aspect of the Jew's life, from birth to death, from early in the morning to late at night. From the minute he enters the door of his house with the mezuzah, everything that goes on in the house is prescribed under a specific set of rules. Mikveh for women deals with the sexual relations between a husband and a wife. From the time that a woman menstruates until 12 days thereafter, they cannot have sexual relations. After the 12 days, actually a 7-day clean period, the woman goes to the evening of the 7th day. The woman goes to the mikveh, cleanses herself thoroughly prior to immersion into the mikveh. This cleansing culminates with the immersion in the mikveh, after which she is no longer in this state of nida, which is loosely translated as impurity. And then relations resume. The attitude of the Torah, or the Jewish religion towards sex, is a very, very open and healthy one, in that man and woman should enjoy each other sexually, that love, the highest form of love and companionship and oneness, is the sexual act. However, the Torah goes one step further and says there are rules and guidelines by which you indulge in this act.
Do you feel that kind of sexual structuring, if you want to call it, heightens sexuality? In other words, that there are certain...
Definitely. I think for several reasons. Number one, if we were to put it in the framework of today's society, we have a society where sexual awareness is so much more commonplace. Women have asserted themselves to say, I need sex too, as much as a male does. With the advent of the birth control pill, sex has become much more enjoyed, much more indulged in, which has a lot of benefits and a lot of negative aspects to it. Perhaps, again, I can only, by virtue of what I've read and what I've heard, I don't know how a man's psyche works or what his biological needs are. But where there is a society where you can have sex anytime, anyway, there are pressures placed on both partners, both on the male, both on the female. This old thing, not tonight, honey, I've got a headache. It's become a commonplace joke. Within the framework of a marriage, where for 2 weeks out of a month, you may not indulge in sex, the Torah says you cannot. then sex becomes something more precious. It becomes something that is looked towards. There is a heightened anticipation that takes place once the woman goes to the mikveh. There's less pressure on the male to perform. There's less pressure on the female to perform. There is a time where both partners say we can relate to one another on a one-to-one basis, verbally, visually. We can relate to one another separate from the sexual act.
I don't mean this in any way in a facetious way, but I would imagine that the spirit among the women at the mikveh is quite heightened and positive and happy when they're there on the 12th day. In other words, they've abstained from sexual relations.
That's right. It's like if you're away from your wife for 2 weeks, you're on vacation or on business trip, and there is an anticipation to come home and to once again rekindle the most intimate relationship that exists between two people, and that is exclusive between these two people.
Tell me what happens at the mikveh, actually. You said first the woman comes in and showers before she enters.
I stress that because, unfortunately, what has happened with mikveh throughout the ages, and again, perhaps because of the need to assimilate into a culture or to become acculturated. I know, when the Jews got off the boat in America or whatever country, they were so anxious to become a part of the culture within which they found themselves, which is understandable, that many of the traditions that are again becoming rekindled were left by the wayside. Mikveh, of course, because of the very private nature that it deals with, the sexual relationship between a husband and wife have always been very private and should be private. That's not to say you can't talk about it. I mean, there are tractates written about sex and mikveh.
Again, what the woman prepares herself. Does she enter the mikveh alone or with other women at the same time?
The woman, the point I was trying to get at was that this was never a means of cleansing oneself physically. It was not so that the woman will take a shower once a month. And the reason I stress that she prepares herself meticulously is to separate the physical cleansing from the actual immersion in the mikveh. The mikveh is the main mikveh in Chicago is a building that houses several little mikvahos, several little of these pools. What you do is you enter a main lobby, which may have other women in it. This is behind a locked door. You cannot come in without announcing, if not your name, because it's such a private thing. No one knows when you go to the mikveh unless they happen to see you walk in. They come into this waiting room. They are then escorted. The woman is escorted into a private bath and shower room that has a double door, one leading into the outer lobby, one leading directly into the private mikveh. So that once she has completed her preparatory cleansing, that is to wash her hair and to cleanse her body thoroughly, to soak in the bathtub for an hour, to take a shower, she then goes into this anteroom mikveh, usually with a sheet or a robe around her. At that point, the shomeres, the woman who is the only other party involved in this in a direct way, comes in to see that she goes into the mikveh water, and that at some point when she dunks herself, her body, every part of her body, including her hair, if it may be very long, that it is covered by the mikveh waters. There are different customs as to how many times a woman will dip down into the water, but 3 is the minimum. The mikveh woman, the shomeres, only stays there long enough to see that this has been accomplished, to hear her blessing, and to answer amen to it, and then the woman comes out, wraps herself in the towel, the sheet, and then she's left to her private.
Now men go to the mikveh too, right?
Yes.
Reverend Wolff, have you ever been to the mikveh?
Yes.
How is what happens to a man different?
Well, I would say it's similar.
But you go for different reasons.
For different reasons.
Yes.
That is, the man goes again for a ritual purification prior to a holiday, prior to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Some Jews believe in attending the mikveh on a daily basis. Some go every Erev Shabbat, and some will frequent the mikveh on Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur. So there are different customs and different reasons and different times that men will attend the mikveh. And
the mikveh is also something that gets involved with one area.
There are 2 different mikvahs that men and women use.
I'm glad you said that.
Yes. With a separate entrance. Men go during the day, women do not. Women go at night. And the reason for that is because as soon as the 7th day is completed, which is, of course, according to the lunar calendar which we follow, is the evening. and one must go as immediately, as soon thereafter, when those 7 days are completed. So they go at night. Men may go during the day.
That's
and
right. There's no specific
there
time.
is a private entrance and a totally separate mikveh for men than for the women.
Now, the mikveh is also part of conversion for men as well as women, but Reverend Wolff there's a specific aspect of Reverend Wolff's work that is involved with conversion as well. What happens when it's a relatively simple operation when we're talking about a child, a baby boy on the 8th day? A lot of people who want to convert to Judaism, men who want to convert to Judaism, who have not been circumcised as infants, something that's relatively rare, or who have been circumcised in a hospital but now want to convert, have to enter through a special kind of circumcision.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, if an individual who's converting to Judaism has never been circumcised, of course he is required to be circumcised and go through a regular circumcision, and that would normally be done in the hospital under general anesthesia, and that would be prior to his going to the mikveh. If this individual that is being converted to Judaism has been circumcised prior to conversion, that is as an infant, and he grew up being a circumcised male, then the requirement would be the ceremony of hatafat dam, to let a drop of blood from the area of the circumcision. And it's a rather simple procedure. It's no more than having a pinprick on your finger to get a drop of blood out. This is done in the area of the circumcision, and the special blessings are recited when that is done.
If someone says to you, "Oh, I don't think I could go through something like that," I mean, how do you alleviate that kind of anxiety?
Well, alleviating that kind of anxiety by asking them if they ever had some blood drawn from them, from a finger specifically, with a lancet, just piercing the finger with a lancet. And yes, most people have had that experience. Well, this is no more than that particular experience. It might be in a more sensitive part of the body, but I could assure them that the pain would not be any more severe or intense than having the tip of your finger pierced with a lancet. I would also like to mention the very fact that we today are involved. I volunteer my services every week to do britot on Russian refugee children and young adults, because they have come or are coming from Russia, from various communities in Russia, and there the practice of Brit Milah is either discouraged or frowned upon, or there is no one to do it. And I would say 90% or more of the Jewish Russian refugees that are coming to this country today are not circumcised, and we do this on a regular basis at Mount Sinai Hospital and some of the other hospitals in the community, like Bethesda and Highland Park Hospital, but most of the program is at Mount Sinai on a weekly basis. And the children and young adults that we've circumcised have ranged in age from 11 months to 37 years.
Did you bring slides with you of something?
No, I did not. So I didn't have any slides.
Okay, you have the slides.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those, I wasn't thinking of slides so much of the operation, but slides of, tell us what the instruments are like.
Well, basically the instruments are very simple. A shield is used to cover the glands and pull through the foreskin, and a special knife or scalpel is used to remove the foreskin. And the individual, as I said, that is trained in this particular area has both the medical and religious training to qualify to do this operation, not only in the hospital, and he has to be recognized and be on the staff of hospitals in order for him to be permitted to do this particular procedure, but also trained to do it in the home under very aseptic conditions and techniques, or in the synagogue. And many, I remember Dr. Siegel's son having his bris in the synagogue, so it could be done either in the synagogue, in a home, or in the hospital.
Yeah, let me ask you something about parental anxiety. Sometimes parents prefer a hospital circumcision, not so much because they want to violate the tradition or they're opposed intellectually to the tradition, but because they're afraid of bringing the child home and being in the living room during the bris, and sometimes fathers look a little pale and mothers stay in the other room. How do you deal with that anxiety, and what kinds of situations like that have you seen?
By assuring the parents that the child is not going to have any more traumatic experience having a ritual circumcision or a brit milah on the 8th day than if they were to have it in the hospital on the 3rd day, and that the same aseptic techniques that are used in the hospital are going to be used in the home, so they don't have to worry about the things like infections or serious complications happening. And the mole is trained to deal with every aspect of emergency that might arise in a circumcision, be it in the home or in the hospital. So therefore, that sort of sets them at ease if they have these anxieties, and discuss them with me in advance.
I know that you have to leave, and
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for being here. The other guests are going to remain with me. We're going to do some more talking, and then we're going to talk to our studio audience as well. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to be here and to share this conversation with you.
Thank you. Well, here we are back again. Reverend Wolff had to leave us, but we have someone equally interesting, Dr. Gary Siegel. Gary, you are the founder of JBS, of the Jewish Burial Society, a nonprofit Chevra Kadisha. Can you tell us what JBS is, what it does, when you founded it?
JBS is about 7 years old, and what we do is help people arrange for funerals at a time when there's really a lot of confusion and when people's emotions can be played on very easily. So a family would call us, and we would make all the arrangements for them. They don't have to deal with an undertaker, and they don't have to make casket selections. It's just one call that would handle everything.
What does nonprofit mean?
Nonprofit means that by state law we're not allowed to make any profits and keep them for ourselves. So we take our profits and distribute them to yeshivas and day schools and in general Jewish education.
So why should someone go to you rather than call a commercial funeral parlor?
They should come to us because our price is about a third of the price that they would have to pay in a commercial funeral home. Second, they know that by coming to us, all of our profits are being recycled back into the community. So in a sense, the death of someone in the family is channeling new life, new Jewish life in the community. And third, there's not the ordeal of having to be confronted with an undertaker who's trying to sell you a $10,000 or $12,000 funeral.
What is the price of the average funeral in Chicago, the average Jewish funeral?
The average Jewish funeral probably now is between $5,000 and $10,000. And
I think it's that high, the average one?
Yeah, the
I've
average.
heard quoted between 3,000 and 4,000, but you think it's between 5 and 10?
Well, they try to get with the traffic bearer. It's quite high. Our price is $975. $975. And that includes everything that's necessary for the funeral, which is the services of the undertaker, the hearse, the removal of the remains, and so on. Cemetery costs are extra, and other costs such as limousine and so on are extra too. The organization was founded about 7 years ago as a result of a show that was on public television called The High Price of Dying or The American Way of Dying, something like that. And at that time, the average Jewish funeral cost about $2,500. And the comparable funeral for people who weren't Jewish was about $1,500.
Now, you only provide traditional funerals, traditional casket, traditional procedure of preparing the body for burial. Can you tell us a little bit about what that traditional procedure is?
The Jewish law states that the body should decompose as rapidly as possible. So for that reason, the caskets have to be made out of wood, and they have to be put together without any metal at all, so we refer to that as a kosher casket. And we have 2 kosher caskets that people could pick from. One is a plain pine cloth-covered box, and the other is a more attractive-looking polished hardwood casket, and that funeral cost about $1,800. Now, when someone goes into an undertaker to make arrangements for a funeral, what they're shown is a display room with all kinds of caskets, wood and metal, and they're sold the most expensive casket, whatever they could afford, or even what they can't afford. And at that time, there's very little sales resistance. If someone wants to spend a smaller amount of money on the funeral, they're discouraged from doing that by the undertaker, saying things like, well, you know, this is the last thing that you're going to do for your aunt or your father, your sister, whatever it is. Don't you want to do it right? You know, don't put him in this thing, you know, buy this casket.
How do you think a Jewish funeral director would answer you? If he were sitting here and heard these charges, what do you think he would say?
I was on a show once with a Jewish funeral director, and they say that, you know, it adds to the dignity to have the body put in a nice casket. And our point of view is that it would be much more fitting to take the extra money and, let's say, donate to a synagogue or to a school and, you know, make a living memorial, because really with a casket what you're doing is showing off to people for 10 minutes or 15, 30 minutes, whatever it is, that, you know, I spent $10,000 on this and now I'm going to put it into the ground.
Because it's just for the sake of the mitzvah, for the sake of the deed, the good deed. You're a professor of accounting.
Yeah,
at the
I don't do this for a living, right?
Yeah.
And I actually I'm not involved in the actual process of the burial either. There's an organization in Chicago called the Jewish Sacred Society, and that is the Chevra Kadisha, and they prepare the body for burial. They do what's called a tahara, which is a ritual washing of the body, and say blessings as they do it, and dress the body in shrouds, which are cotton clothing and no pockets in it. And then after the body is dressed in the shrouds, and there's some Israel earth put over the eyes and other parts of the body, then the casket is closed and it's not opened again.
And
unless
you feel that this kind of linen shroud and excuse me, in a plain wooden casket is a more dignified burial?
Well, I think so, but you know, that's the value judgment. But we do it because that's what Jewish law demands.
And how popular has this been?
Well,
how often do you get called?
We do 2 or 3 funerals a month, and we do the tahara on every funeral. Every funeral we do, we have the tahara performed.
Are the rabbis of the Chicago area working with you actively, or do they feel that by working with you that somehow they're damaging the relationships or endangering the relationships with the Jewish funeral homes?
Well, I can't speak for all the rabbis. The rabbis aren't very supportive of our organization, not because they're against us, but it might be because they have other commitments.
Dignity is a matter of perspective, but I think the underlying difference between a funeral as the secular world sees it and perhaps the way the Jewish world sees it is that when you view a casket that's open with the body that is dressed in their finest, with the face that's made up, it's a definite denial of death. Many books have been written very recently by psychologists, psychiatrists, to face death, the different stages of death, perhaps with so many terminal diseases that are brought to the fore and people are brought back into the community. The attitude of the Jew is death is a part of life, and it ought to be faced as simply and as naturally as possible. You need no fantasy about it. A person dies, is put into the earth, the body decomposes, and that's the end of one phase of a life. So that the stress is put on the natural aspect of it. That
let's move from death to life. We have our sofer with
I had something to say.
Well, you'll have to draw it. You can't say it. You have to write it. Yochanan Nathan is our sofer on the program today, our scribe. Can you show us a little bit of a little calligraphy or how you write a sacred document?
Well, first let me explain that the kind of writing that I do is known as Lashon HaKodesh, meaning the holy script. It's also known as Ktav Ashuri or Ksav Ashuri, which means an upright kind of a writing, as opposed to the modern joining type of Hebrew script that you would see in ordinary writing of letters and things like that. It's known as the holy language because this is the language that God spoke when He gave the Torah and when He created the world. And it's very important to understand that in the writing of these documents, the holy nature of the letters has to be preserved in toto. You have to, in fact, say at the outset of writing any of these documents that you're doing it for the specific purpose of writing that particular holy document. Now, each letter, apart from having a legal stature, a legal shape, to which it has to conform, each letter has tremendous spiritual import. And what we try to do in the writing of the Sefer Torah is stick or make sure that we comply with both of these situations, the legal aspect and the spiritual aspect. People might know it as the Kabbalah. The letters are very, very intrinsically bound up with the mystical aspects of Judaism. And as though people don't really know it, and it's even not a prerequisite that in the writing of these documents, nevertheless, we've tried and do this from the outset. I'd like to show you some interesting little things which I have, which I often show people, and that is, we know, for example, that the first letter in the Torah is Beis. Beis meaning the second letter. But the first letter of the Ten Commandments is Aleph. Okay? Now, the sages told us that Beis refers to a house. Beis is a house. If you write it out, it means a house. So the world was created as the house of God. However, the house is empty until the giving of the Torah, which starts with the first letter Aleph. The Aleph refers to God, so to speak. Now, even though the Aleph refers to God, we have indicated within it the actual presence of God, and this is what I'll try to show you on the screen here. It works like this: an Aleph is made from a Yud, a Vav, and another Yud. That's what makes an Aleph, basically. Now, each letter in Judaism has a specific numerical equivalent. Okay? A Yud equals 10. The Vav is 6. The Yud is 10, making, as you can see, 26. Now, the name of God, which is known as the ineffable name of God, also equals 26. So here you have, in the little Aleph, you have the whole name of God indicated straight away. And there are countless other examples that we could show. For example, you have over here a Mem. A Mem is made of a Chaf and a Vav joined together. That's what makes a Mem. So here you have 20 and 6 is 26 once again. So the combinations of all of these letters make up the words, and as the Medrash tells us, 2 letters builds 2 houses. Okay, each of the words is like a house, a containment for the divine revelation. So this is why it's a very important thing that each letter has to be letter perfect, legal perfect, and also have the correct intent, the neshama, so to speak, the soul, which is the divine radiance shining within it.
You feel a deep sense of spiritual resonance with these letters. I mean, they're not just letters on paper, they're in some way connected with something cosmic.
Oh, certainly. These letters are in fact the very substance of the world. If we were given to see, if the eye was given to see, what we would see would be the letters of the creation of the world.
Is this a teaching from Hasidism?
Well, it happens to be from the Kabbalah, first of all, but it's very well documented within the Hasidic line of thought, yes.
Thank you. We're going to see some slides now of the mikveh in Chicago that Elizabeth has brought with her. And as we look at them, Elizabeth, can you give us a description of what we're looking at?
Yes, that is the outer facade of the mikveh. If you can see, there is an entrance to the extreme right, there was an entrance to the extreme right, which was the men's mikveh. The one in the center was for the women. This is the hallway as you enter into the waiting room. This is already inside one of the private bathrooms, so to speak, with one door leading into the mikveh, the other leading into the foyer. As you see, there's a private bath, shower, and sink for all the personal cleansing that the woman must do prior to immersion in the mikveh. There is also on the wall, there are a plaque of instructions, a checklist. This is the mikveh itself, a narrow view of it, the stairway leading down into the mikveh. The waters of the mikveh are about chest level on a woman almost 5 feet tall. Here's a better view of the mikveh itself with the water in it. The woman goes down into the mikveh, immerses herself totally and completely in the water. This is a bar. This is a trough that through which both the rainwater that is gathered into a reservoir mixes with tap water and then ultimately goes through that trough system into the mikveh itself. The mikveh waters are changed daily, and there are 4 mikvahs that are always full in the mikveh for the use. So this is again the outer view with the parking lot directly attached to the building for easy access.
Thanks very much. We're out here in the audience now, and I'm going to see if anyone has any questions. Someone? Go on, don't be shy. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask about your view, or the Orthodox view toward birth control, use of birth control, contraception.
That's a view that is a very liberal view, in that each case is adjudicated on its own merit. There are definite allowances for birth control under very certain conditions, and it would be presumptuous of me to make a general statement. The best I can say is that when properly asked of an halachic authority, given the circumstances for which birth control is requested, the judgment is then made. But there are definitely allowances made for birth control. If I can only interject a personal view, the Jewish people are at a -0 population growth. I think we are the first ethnic group ever to have reached that status. So that, of course, the purpose of any human being, or Jewish people in general, is to perpetuate the Jewish tradition. But there are allowances made for birth control under specific conditions.
Another question?
I'd like to ask, what is a girl or a woman's first reaction on her first visit to a mikvah?
I guess it depends a lot on what her background is. I would like to stress, which I neglected to mention, that brides do go to the mikvah prior to their wedding. I would hope for the Orthodox Jew who was raised in this kind of an environment, it is, for the first time that she goes, probably a very uplifting experience, not only by virtue of the act itself, but because she is passing from one phase of her life into another. She was an unmarried woman heretofore. She is now going into a totally new phase of her life. And to use this spiritual immersion as a step from which to begin this new life is very meaningful. For anyone who is not steeped in this kind of a background, I would think perhaps it is even more meaningful. We tend to take it for granted. This is a thing that you do, like you light Sabbath candles, or you wake up in the morning and you thank God. For someone who is new to this, I would think it's a very uplifting experience.
Another question on any of the topics?
I would like to know, Dr. Siegel, you made some reference to the fact that a Jewish funeral is normally more expensive than a Christian funeral. What is the basis of that? Why is that?
The reason is that there's very few Jewish funeral directors, and when someone dies in a Jewish family, they normally think of calling up one of those people. And when you have a tight control in the market like that, you could raise the prices a lot higher. And the same is true for black people. The public TV program that I mentioned before, I said that Jewish funerals and funerals for blacks are much higher, about $1,000 higher than for other groups. I wanted to mention one other thing, that our funerals are the same as the funerals that would cost $10,000 or $20,000. The only difference is that the casket that we use is a less expensive casket. So all the other services that people get are exactly the same.
Why do you think more people don't come to you? They just don't know?
They don't know about us.
Yeah, well, hopefully this program will help that out somewhat.
But is it only for an Orthodox service? Could somebody from a Reform community come to you for help?
Anybody who's Jewish comes to us. The Jewish law applies equally to everybody.
Another question?
What type of special tools do you use to write your scrolls? What type of pen do you use?
What I use is a quill made from a turkey feather. The original implement was a reed. In Hebrew it's called a kaneh. And the sages tell us that the whole creation of the reed was in order to write the Torah. So today we traditionally use a turkey feather, because when the Jews migrated to a place like Europe, they didn't have any more reeds. They had to find something else. Technically, you could use anything which is good for writing. Even a fountain pen could be used. However, we keep the tradition and we use this kind of a pen which makes the letters in the way that they're prescribed.
Yochanan, how long does it take to write a Sefer Torah, Torah scroll?
It varies according to the scribe. I heard recently a scribe in New York finished one in, I think, 60 working days, which is a feat which cannot be described, I'll tell you that. Usually it takes over a year. But this man worked, I think, 14 hours a day writing at this close work, and he did tremendous work.
What kind of work do you do most of the time? Do you write the cloth, the parchment inside a mezuzah, or do you do tefillin making?
I like to write the parchments inside of tefillin because of what I think the need is in the community. And most of my work, however, is in the checking of existent cloth, existent parchments. People bring them to me to check them over. I check over ones which I've bought in order to sell the public a kosher scroll, something which people are not really aware of, and they're involved in buying things which are of no value to them whatsoever. Most people think of a mezuzah as something you hang around your neck, or a little piece of metal on the door. They're not even aware of the fact that it has to be a kosher scroll, and if it's not a kosher scroll, it's invalid. It doesn't work. It's just you might as well have a bubblegum wrapper on your door.
To you, what's the reason for a mezuzah on the door? Is there a reason beyond the fact that it's commanded halachically?
Well, the real reason is, of course, that it's commanded halachically. But within that reason, there are other ideas involved. One is that this was the protection that God afforded His Jewish people when He gave them the Torah. He said, if you want to be protected, have a mezuzah on all of your doors. Something that people don't know. Usually they have it on their front door and they don't remember the other doors. There are other ideas also. It's for a richas yomim, which means length of days, as it's written in the mezuzah. In the Shema Yisrael part of the mezuzah, it says Laman yirbu yemeichim, in order to lengthen your days on the earth.
So you feel it has real protective value? I mean, that it really protects the people inside the home? Certainly,
there are countless tales you could retell about this. But one of the famous ones I could retell quickly,
Please.
if you would like. There was a man, Onkelos, and he was a convert to Judaism, and he was a Roman. The Romans sent people to try and legionnaires they brought to try and bring him back to Rome, and each time that they came there, he started to talk to them about Judaism, and they converted also. Each one got. So finally, they sent a large army, and they said to them, they said to the general, "You may not ask him any questions." So when he was going out, he put his hand on the mezuzah. So one of the soldiers broke rank and said, "What's going on here?" So he says, "Well, we're not like you people. We have our king guiding us from the outside. You soldiers have to guide your king from the outside." So they said, "Oh, what a fantastic religion this is," and they all converted also. So here you see it afforded protection from the Roman armies.
Let me ask this of Gary. In a way, you're a Baal Tshuva too, the term that I used to describe Yochanan earlier in the show. Tell us a little bit about your spiritual odyssey, how you went from being, I want to say, a typical American Jew, I don't know what term you want to use in quotes, to being somebody who became much more observant.
That's it's a long story. If you have an hour some other time, I'd be happy to share it with you.
How
but
about
basically,
a minute and a half?
We were looking for meaning in our lives, and this is the path that we found out about. We were Jewish, so we looked into our own heritage. And one of the things that Elizabeth had said before is that in Jewish life it's very disciplined, but it's also very meaningful, because every act that we do is filled with meaning, from drinking water to going to sleep at night, getting up in the morning. Everything has a reason, and there's a blessing to say for most of those acts.
And what have you found by this return to tradition? What have you personally found?
Well, what I found is that there is a reason for our being here. There's a reason for the world being created, and what I'm doing is what a Jew is supposed to do: just do the mitzvahs, do the commandments that are prescribed in the Torah, to bring about the perfection of the world.
Elizabeth, were you born Orthodox, or did you become Orthodox?
No, I was born Orthodox.
I see. How are you different today as an Orthodox woman than you were as an Orthodox girl in your younger years?
Again, I guess it's basically the exposures and for women particularly, the world is open to them. We can do just about anything. And on the one hand, it's a blessing. On the other hand, it makes it that much more difficult to integrate an observant life with a secular life. But I think we're seeing in our culture all over a revival of religion. You see born-again Christians, you see youth that are either getting involved in cults or are drawn to a religious denomination of some sort, so that clearly there's a need for a commitment, perhaps a need to go back to one's heritage, to one's roots, to intensify an identity, a personal awareness of oneself. And for me, I guess as I grew as a wife and as a mother and as a woman, there are always challenges as to how I can incorporate religion into whatever I do. I started out as a teacher, I'm now a businesswoman, and each phase has brought its own challenges and its own gratification. But as I stated very early, perhaps the underlying core of the traditional Jew is that he adapts his life to his religion and not the other way around.
Yochanan, how about you? You started to tell us a little earlier in the show that began life in South Africa as a liberal Jew, and when do those changes come about, and what have those changes meant to you?
Well, I went from South Africa and Rhodesia. I really went to school in Rhodesia, and then I went to Israel as a Zionist youth. I used to be the leader in Rhodesia of Habonim movement, a socialist group, a-religious basically. While in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, I was involved with many people there, and one of them, who actually lives here and around Chicago, was involved in a yeshiva at the time, and we used to speak extensively on certain philosophical topics. Along the way, I became involved with these people, and slowly, I guess, I was convinced of the truth of the religion. I was always a person who was involved in philosophical ideas, and I guess I gravitated towards these things. Then I went to Kfar Chabad, a Hasidic yeshiva in Israel, and there I studied for many years under a rabbi whose name is Rabbi Gafni. He happens to be a convert from Australia, and to see him today, you would think that he's one of the wisest people you could meet. He looks like he's always been religious. After that, I got married to a person here from America, and I came to Chicago. Here I am. Min Hashem mitzadei gever. God directs the steps of man, I guess. That's where I'm at today.
What kind of change was this for your family? Was it substantial?
It was radical, to say the least, but we weathered the storms.
Yeah. Well, let me thank all of you, Gary Siegel, Elizabeth Shapiro, and Yochanan Nathan, for being with us. Please, if you look at your screen, you'll see a slide in a moment listing the phone numbers of these people, how to get in touch with them, for the Jewish Burial Society, for Beis Stam Bookstore. The slide doesn't look like it's coming up, but if you contact us at there it goes. Yochanan Nathan's number at Beis Stam at the bookstore. And I'll say in the meantime, please write to us at Hayom, care of the WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago. Let us hear your criticisms, your comments, your suggestions for future shows. Please be with us again next time on Hayom. Shalom.